Hey folks, welcome back to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. I'm Chris Peterson of HuskerBigRed.com, and joining me as always is Danny Gillette, also now of the HuskerBigRed.com. So just a great announcement off the bat. We've got Danny is going to be coming aboard HuskerBigRed.com as our managing editor. So we're going to be combining our talents here at the HuskerBigRed.com website, just with as we are here on the YouTube channel. So Danny, it's great to have you aboard. And how are you doing on this Friday morning?
I'm taking my talents to South Beach and joining Husker Big Red, as LeBron James once said. But no, I'm really excited. It's gonna be great to work with you again. Great to work with everybody over there. Got a good crew over there, and I'm very happy. On this Friday, we have basketball action. We have some good recruiting news, in my opinion, and we were just talking off air a little bit here. Spring practice isn't too far away.
No, spring football's coming up in a few weeks, and the spring game, I believe, is April 22nd. So I know everybody in Nebraska is going to be, packing the stadium, Lincoln Memorial Stadium, for that one to catch a glimpse of, the first kind of real football that we'll see under Matt Rule. I know I'm excited. There's that quarterback competition. I think that's going to be really important. Jeff Sims, Casey Thompson. Casey obviously is not going to be, taking part much in spring practice, but yeah, there's going to be a lot of new faces, new coaching staff, and there's going to be a ton of storylines, this spring. So, man, I can't wait for the Huskers to get going and even just practice so we can start, getting some of those rumblings. I'm sure we'll see. This isn't the Deion Sanders show where they're going to show everything behind the scenes, but I'm sure that the social media crew is going to be giving us some nice videos. Once practice gets going of guys actually playing football. So, I'm just excited every day that we get closer to the 2023 season. Is a good thing for me.
I can't wait to see the speed of all the wide receivers. I mean, speed was something that they really focused on over the course of this offseason, and now we're getting close to seeing it in action. I'm excited to see, what a guy like Art Gilbert can do to the tight end room, and if he can be, that breakout player that everybody thought he could be pre-injury. So there are a lot of fun storylines to follow, and I feel like, I can't predict the outcome like I have been able to the past couple seasons. And granted, we didn't think last season was going to go the way it would in any capacity, but you know, I mean, this is the first year in quite a while that I feel legitimately hopeful. I felt hopeful before the 2021 season, but I think that was more just wishing and hoping hopeful and not actually concrete feelings of hope. So I'm fired up.
Yeah, it's I think everybody had that hope too, but yeah, the concrete feeling of hope with Matt Rule, and just I know that he's done it before. I know he's a proven winner. I know people want to, say, oh, he hasn't beat enough top 25 teams or he hasn't done this, but man, the guy took Baylor to a, conference championship game. He won a conference title at Temple. Like, those are the kinds of things that Nebraska would love to have done, in the Big 10 era. They've been to the Big 10 championship game once, and that was like the second or third season. It's been a long time. I mean, Wisconsin wasn't even in our division the last time that we made the Big Ten championship game. So I just think that Matt Rule he's got a plan in place. I think he's hired a really great staff. I like all the staff moves. I know he didn't quite meet the $7 million or whatever for the on-field assistance. And look, maybe some guys, didn't come that they wanted to come. I mean, that certainly happens. But I feel like, from the support staff to the on-field staff, he's hired a lot of guys that it's like players, they have a lot of upside. Garrett McGuire, we were talking about him off air, and I, like I said, I think this guy within the next 10 years, I almost guarantee you this guy's going to be a college football head coach somewhere. Like, I just think he's a rising star, and I think that 5 years from now, Matt Rule is going to look really smart for hiring this guy when he did.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't think, if everything goes according to plan, I don't think that he's gonna be a Nebraska lifer as a coach. And you
No.
know, and honestly, if things go according to plan, same thing with Tony White. I could see him moving up too because he flies under the radar because he was a defensive coordinator at Syracuse, but he's a very good coordinator. So I love that we have coaches on the staff that have legitimate prospects in terms of rising up the coaching ranks. And I love hearing Ed Foley talk. He just fires me up. The attention to detail on special teams, and then you have EJ Barthel making his way through New Jersey and Pennsylvania. And it's just so exciting to see the mix of personalities on the coaching staff, and yet they seem to blend together. And that's not something that we saw last season. We saw 5 different coaches with 5 different ideas, and it didn't work. So I'm really excited about this staff, and I'm really excited about the group of players, and it's just a new hope for me, I think, this year. And I'm excited to see where Matt Rule kind of takes the program.
A New Hope. I'm a Star Wars fan, so I just got the Star Wars, vision in
Hmm.
my. So I'm trying
Yep.
to think, what's Matt Rule? Is he like our Luke Skywalker or like our
Mm.
Obi-Wan? Like it's a kind of a hard. I'm not sure
I
exactly
would
what he would
say
be.
I would say Luke Skywalker because he's not the leader yet, but he is next in line, the emerging young, next in line powerhouse type of person. And then I don't know. Let's see. I'm trying to think who Darth Vader would
So,
be.
so does that make is Tom Osborne like Obi-Wan Kenobi and then
Yeah, Tom Osborne would be Obi
I,
Wan Kenobi,
that makes
and
sense though. That makes sense.
Darth Vader would be I don't know. Let's see.
Dion.
Probably Dion. I was gonna say PJ Fleck, but
Or actually probably like Ohio's. Yeah, PJ Fleck probably, yeah. I would
so
say like Kirk Ferentz, but we beat them last year. It was like Ohio State, maybe.
hey, as long as they keep Brian employed, like they don't scare me at all. So
I know. That's the funniest, like 25 points a game, or it seems like Kirk won't. It's just a weird situation. I think Brian eventually is going to just leave for the NFL so that his dad doesn't have to fire him, basically.
Ohio State's like I mean Ohio State. I was like Chewbacca or something, just
Yeah.
someone that you did not really scared of, kind of annoying, but maybe you come around and see that they weren't all that bad. But yeah, Brian and Kirk Ferentz don't scare me. It's more honestly, it's more UCLA and USC coming around the bend here, and I think Lincoln Riley might be the new Darth Vader when he gets to town. Honestly.
Yeah, I mean I keep hearing about stuff. I want them to release the stupid schedule or the pod. I mean, I understand pods, I guess, in a sense, but I don't though. I mean, I get like I don't understand the point of a pod outside of scheduling. So to me, it's just weird. I hate pods. Just just have your permanent rivals and then play everybody. Just rotate everybody else on a schedule. I don't know what the best thing is, but I mean, I'm excited to see how it all plays out though, and I do think it'll be good for Nebraska to get some games. I'm sure that one of Nebraska's rivals, I'm almost positive, is going to be like UCLA or because it's just the closest. It's the closest place outside of Nebraska's the farthest place west in the Big Ten. So I just have a feeling that they're going to have that rivalry, but I'm okay with that. They had a little bit of a rivalry, not a rivalry, but they played UCLA a couple times in the 90s and then the 2000, I think late 2010s or early 2000s. So I mean, I think
2015 Foster Farms Bowl, right?
yeah, the Foster Farms Bowl, and they had a home and away too when Brent Hundley was the quarterback for UCLA. And I remember the UCLA beat us twice. Nebraska went there, and we got a pretty decent lead, and then blew it. And then I think actually the same thing happened. They came to Lincoln, and then Brent Hundley just like went crazy in the second half. So they swept us the last time, but I believe we swept them in like 93, 94. Went out there. This is when they had JJ Stokes and they came back to Lincoln and we kicked their ass. But I think it would be a good matchup. But I just have a feeling that when they do this pod system, that Nebraska is going to be locked into stuff with those West Coast teams.
And not for nothing, I'm happy to see Brett Hundley finally get his due this past season with the Ravens because I always thought he was a decent quarterback. And so, but anyway, um, yeah. So I'm excited to see like how the schedule shakes out and all the rivalries of not of the coaches, but just having Dion and Matt Rule in week two programs that are on the rise, and that's gonna be a must-watch game. And man, there's a lot of interesting storylines, and to this point, the coaching staff has shown that they want to work hard and they want to win. So when you look at a team, like TCU, when they were able to turn it around so quickly, I don't think Matt Rule will get a lot of slack if he has a losing season.
No, the honeymoon period's not going to last very long, for Matt Rule. I think the first year objective is just obviously to get Nebraska to a bowl game and a winning season. I think would be a huge step forward, and I think that should be a very realistic goal. I mean, mentioned Tony White. He's a big-time defensive coordinator, and I think he's going to have a bigger impact on this team than people realize. There's also a lot of, they lost Ernest Hausman and Garrett Nelson. That really hurt, but there's a lot of guys back on this defense that played last year, almost the entire secondary. You've got, both linebackers who started last year are starting, not Hausman. But Reimer and Heinrich are going to be back there. You've got Ty Robinson, you got Hutchmacher, you've got a bunch of guys.
Malcolm Hartzog, who really came on late at the end of in the middle point of last season. I was really impressed with him.
Yeah, you've got a lot of nice players there, and especially in the secondary and the front. I mean, I obviously wish they could nab a 300-pound defensive tackle in the transfer portal, but that's easier said than done. But I feel like that Tony White has to feel pretty good about what he's got to work with. I've heard some good things about Chief Borders. So far I feel like he's a super, athletic guy. So yeah, I mean, I feel like they've got, some nice pieces. They got MJ Sherman from Georgia. So, all those, how Tony White kind of mends all those together. But I think this defense is going to be a lot better than people expect it to be next year. I really do.
Yeah, and I'll be interested to see how the players' different styles of play fit in with the 3-3-5 defense. I know that there's different variations and things like that, but just to see it kind of all come together, and I know we kind of ran it last year, but let's be real, we ran a patchwork defense up until Bill Bush came, and you know even that was kind of a holdover defense until the new coach was hired, quite frankly. So it'll be interesting to see, a full-time, defense coordinator, how he can establish his system. And, Tony White was able to get 3 freshmen at Syracuse for accolades at the end of his, I believe it was second season with the Orange. So he has the ability to put players in positions to succeed, and I'm excited to see what he can do with his group and, what kind of flair he adds that we maybe didn't see last year.
Yeah, we'll see how he what he brings to this team. But there's a lot of nice pieces. And they added Elijah Judy as another guy, in the transfer portal. So I feel like that this team has a lot of nice pieces, and it's going to be exciting. Offensively, I feel really good too. Again, offensive line, they could add another guy, but I feel pretty good about this depth chart right now, going into the spring. So we'll have more time to break that down, and we'll basically, before kind of spring gets going, we'll look at every position, break down the position battles, and focus on all that stuff. But let's get to a little bit of recruiting. Not that there's been a ton of news this week, but there's been a couple. We saw some new crystal balls this week. You had a short video on that earlier on the channel, Danny, about Dylan Raiola getting his crystal ball. Ian Flint from Texas got another crystal ball this week, and they're both going to be coming on that big visit weekend, March 25th. They're 2 of the guys that are coming there. There's a bunch of others. So it's been a pretty solid week. Nebraska's, made the final, the kind of the cut list, the top 5 for a few guys here. And we can talk about that. But what are some things that have kind of stuck out to you, I guess, this week about, Nebraska on the recruiting trail?
They're still involved with Texas, and I know that's no big surprise, but I believe he made wide receiver Zion Kearney's top 6, and he's coming for the spring game. So, he's a 4-star wide receiver. I believe he had a 90 overall rating on 24/7 Sports, and he's just that downfield playmaker, a ton of speed. He would be an absolute, I hate using the word game changer, but he would stand out in the wide receiver room. And Kearney is a guy that you want, that Texas speedster. You want to, continue to establish your connections there. And, I'm excited that we're making, top 7s or top 5s for, guys like Aaron Hampton, Zion Kearney. To be honest with you, I don't really give a crap when it's like top 12, top 15. Like at that point, just make up your damn mind. Give me a break. But top 7, top 5, then I'll pay a little bit more attention. I'm sure all the recruits will sleep well knowing that I personally do not like any of those top 10 lists. But anyway, I'll get off my soapbox and say that I'm excited. We're appearing in more recruits, final lists. And I believe there was another one, Gore, right, that we talked about.
Yeah. I can't quite remember what. I believe Nebraska made the top 5 for him. I was trying to look him up earlier, but I think he's a defensive tackle also out of Texas.
Yeah.
But at any rate, I mean, there's kind of all those guys, and then obviously there's the the Dylan Raiola news for the week, and I guess the biggest news outside of the crystal ball is the fact that Georgia's offensive coordinator Todd Monken is moving on to the NFL. He's taken over with the Ravens. Georgia's already hired a new offensive coordinator, Mike Bobo, who was there as basically as an off-field analyst last season. The Raiolas have done an interview with Steve Wiltfong of 24/7 Sports, and they said that they are familiar with Bobo and that basically it's not going to, impact the recruitment. But I mean, at the same time, I mean, that's what what else is he really going to say? But when I look at it, I don't know. Some people have pointed to that and said, "Oh, Nebraska's going to be like automatic and da da da." Now, I don't really see that as the case because look, I mean, Marcus Satterfield is just building his relationship with Dylan Raiola at this point over a couple of months, so it's not like Nebraska has an offensive coordinator that's had been recruiting Dylan Raiola for 3 years. So I mean, I feel like they're kind of in a similar boat with Georgia. So I don't think it's that big of a deal. What do you think?
I don't really think it's that big of a deal either. What I do think is a little bit of a bigger deal is that they're recruiting another quarterback, and I forget his name at the moment, but I know he's out of Connecticut, Tyler something. And, I see that as more of a bigger deal just because, maybe Georgia thinks that, they don't have a shot with him, or maybe, I'm not saying that Rayola would ever sit, but maybe he wants a guarantee that he'll start because you never know. But, I think it's going to be a close race, and I think that end of March visit is going to be crucial. I really do. And, you talk about the star power that's going to be there. And we got a 5-star defensive lineman, Williams Nawarni. He's coming. And so that is going to be, he's a 2024 5-star defensive lineman. So there's going to be a lot of heavy hitters at this VIP event. And I'll be interested to see what kind of inroads the program can make because, the fact that we're getting this many talented players to at least visit the campus is certainly a good thing. And, the more that they come and visit, the more the word gets out about the program and what Matt Rule's trying to do. So I'm really excited for the end of March, and I'm hoping, Rayola will come here. I'm not really, like I said in the video the other day, a medium confidence crystal ball score of 4. That's not exactly, a confident prediction in my opinion, but a crystal ball for Nebraska is a crystal ball for Nebraska. So, I mean, things are trending, I think, in the right direction, and we'll see what happens at the end. At the end, it's anybody's fair game. It's fair game. So.
Yeah, so Merklinger, wanted to go back. Jake Merklinger is the other quarterback you mentioned that Georgia offered. He's actually from Savannah, Georgia,
That was from
and
Connecticut. Okay.
yeah, and he's ranked 61st overall in the entire 2024 class. He's the 7th ranked quarterback. He's started to move up pretty. So I mean, that's a pretty strong alternative. You're not number 1 like Dylan Raiola. It is worth mentioning that Georgia does actually have a top 200 quarterback in their 2024 class right now, but they didn't take any quarterbacks last year, so it wouldn't be shocking if they took 2. I think that's their plan to take 2, whether it's Raiola or somebody else. So yeah, that'll be interesting, to see, Georgia making other offers. But again, the visits are going to tell the story. But I do think that there's a pretty firm right now top 3 of Georgia, Nebraska, and then USC, which I think is trailing a little bit. Like I said, Malachi Nelson, that's just a big hurdle for USC to overcome. And even if the Trojans get both of those guys, they're not both going to play. So I don't really understand the point of it because it's basically going to turn into then once Caleb Williams leaves, a 5-star QB competition, and the loser's going to hit the transfer portal. So honestly, I don't see Dylan Raiola going to USC. I really don't. I'd be surprised if he did make that move. So I think it's going to be Nebraska, Georgia, and right now, if I would give Nebraska a better than 50% chance. I would say Nebraska's the leader in the clubhouse right now, but it's like they're teeing it up on 18 at the Masters with a 1-stroke lead, and they still have to get a par on 18, and we all know that that's not a done deal. So that's where it is right now. But from getting to the 18th tee to signing the scorecard, so to speak, is a long way to go. And I don't think Dylan's going to make a decision in March either. I think he's going to wait probably till the summer.
Yeah, I think there's a huge gap between USC and then Nebraska and Georgia, and I think really the only allure that I could see, given what Nebraska already has, a quarterback is Lincoln Riley's track record of development, Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray. I mean, say what you want about those two in the pros, but they were dynamic in the college game, and so they made it to the NFL. So I think that and the fact that USC has some pretty good wide receivers coming in. Zachariah Branch is one of them, and he's an absolute stud. So I could see where USC would be of interest in that regard, but Nebraska has Malachi Coleman, Xavier Betts, these guys, and we can match wide receiver talent, I believe, with USC. And I know that's a lofty thing to say, but I truly believe that this wide receiver room could be the selling point for Rayola to come here, and who knows if he commits here, what other kind of talent he will bring. Because I know people say, oh, one recruit won't help a whole class, but players talk, players connect, players communicate, and if a 5-star quarterback comes to Nebraska, receivers are going to want to play with him.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and I feel like Nebraska's got a good shot with Aaron Hampton too. He's a top 100 recruit. I know Alabama's in the mix, and Alabama did, I think, get a crystal ball from Wiltfong. But what you need to realize about Steve Wiltfong, and he says this, he's very transparent about it. His crystal balls are not a prediction. That he calls them. He basically says this is the pulse of the recruitment right now. So like when he put his crystal ball in for Georgia. Okay, Georgia he was not saying I'm predicting that Dylan Raiola is going to land at Georgia, but he's basically saying that Georgia's the leader right now, and that's where the crystal ball sits, with Wiltfong. But I mean, he switches that all the time. I mean, you'll see him do that. So he's not making a prediction. That's why you'll never see Wiltfong like put in a confidence level higher than 6. He always puts it at a 6. And look, Georgia could go ahead and close it out, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's saying like, I know for a fact Raiola is going to commit to Georgia. And I feel the same way about his pick for Hampton. I think he put one in for Alabama. I could be wrong, could be somebody else. But, when you look at what Aaron Hampton said, he's going to take that official visit here at Nebraska. Basically said if any school deserves, multiple visits, it's Nebraska, the way that they've recruited him. He's from Texas. So I feel like Nebraska, again, with him is in the top 2, him and Alabama. And, if you get Dylan Raiola, that's just going to be, I mean, look back at last year when Texas they finally got the commitment from Arch Manning. And then it was like, boom, they got like 10 commitments within like a week's time. And looks that some of them were 3-star guys, and they got, some 4-star guys. And that you're going to see that same type of thing happen at Nebraska, especially because it's been such a long time since Nebraska's landed. I mean, honestly, I don't think they've ever come close to landing the number 1 overall player. So, I mean, literally, this would be the biggest recruit in Nebraska history by a pretty wide margin, especially in the internet rankings era.
Yeah, he would be an absolutely dynamic player to land. He would help, jumpstart the 2024 recruiting class. And, I don't want to get my hopes up. I really hope he comes here, but, Georgia's going to be tough to beat. I do like our chances, but, we'll see if any other crystal balls come out over the next couple weeks or so. And I'm really interested to see, what comes of that VIP, visit weekend at the end of March. Will connections be made? Will we get a commitment? Will players just visit? There's a lot of heavy hitters, like I said earlier, at that event. And, hopefully Nebraska can make some inroads throughout the weekend.
Yeah, one prediction I'm going to make right now I'm going to say that Nebraska gets a commitment from Ian Flint by that weekend. He got a new crystal ball with a confidence of 8. He's got a bunch for Nebraska. Basically, every Husker insider on 24/7's put in a prediction. I really like this guy. When I watch his film, he's like 6'5", like 250, but he's a really good blocker. He's a really refined blocker for this stage of his career. So I think Ian Flint's going to fit really well into what Nebraska wants to do running the football. But at this point, let's segue over to some basketball, because it's been a really good couple games for the Nebraska Cornhuskers. They, just beat Rutgers on the road last week, which, that was a game that, look, not a lot of people thought they were going to have a chance to win. I didn't think they were going to have a chance to win that game. They were 12. I think it actually ballooned up to being a 14-point underdog. and the Huskers won the game by double digits. Keisei Tominaga, had another 20-point outing. CJ Wilcher was on fire from three. And on Sunday, it's going to be the Maryland Terrapins coming to town. They just upset number one Purdue last night, so they're trying to work their way into the NCAA tournament mix. And Danny, what are you looking for on Sunday out of the Huskers?
I'm looking forward to seeing, Tominaga, just absolutely light up the score sheet again. He actually got a shout out from Steph Curry yesterday. So that's exciting to see, and it's exciting to watch this team battle. They may not be the most talented or, the toughest or whatever, but they battle, and they battled against Rutgers. They really did. There were times in the game when things got rocky at points, but they were able to continue to fight through and play well. Derek Walker, Sam Griesel played at a high level, and I think Sunday it's going to be about continuing to play that attack style of defense. They do a good job of, I think, defending the perimeter and trying to work things out in the post, but I'm really intrigued about how this team will finish. And I think this past week or something, I was ready to, before this past, couple weeks actually, I was ready to drive Fred Hoiberg to the airport. But, I think these past couple weeks have really shown me something. This team can battle, this team can fight. And as long as Fred keeps this identity for the program, I think, good things could be ahead. And like we talked about on, what was it, Monday? Fred's finally figured out an identity for the program, and that's important if he wants to keep his job, quite frankly.
Yeah, and this is another big opportunity for Nebraska. This is a chance to get back to 500, to win a third straight game. They'd be 7-10 in the Big Ten Conference. I mean, they've got 4 games left. 3 are at home. The next 3 games are at home. So I mean, if you can win these next couple of games, I mean, it'll be really interesting in terms of getting to postseason basketball. I'm not saying anything about like the tournament or anything like that, but if you can win a couple of these next few games, I think the NIT, becomes a much more realistic thing. And considering where Nebraska's been the past few years, I think the NIT would be a pretty nice achievement. Apparently, at this point, you don't have to have a 500 record to make the NIT anymore. So I think it's just a matter of, showing that you're worthy. And so basically, one of the top 100 teams in the country, because the NIT takes the top 32 teams after the NCAA tournament. Teams that the smaller conferences, if you win your conference but don't win the tournament, you get an automatic bid. So there's not a ton of that large bids to the NIT, but I really think, look, Nebraska deserves one. I saw a bracket projection for the NIT that had Ohio State in there, and it's like, for one, Nebraska beat Ohio State, and 2, Ohio State's like the second worst team in the Big Ten, so they have no merit to playing in the NIT at all, whereas Nebraska at least is put together some wins. And I think every one of these games on the schedule is winnable. You've got Maryland at home. I know you've got Michigan State at home, I believe, and Minnesota also. Yeah, so I mean, these are Minnesota and Michigan State Maryland and Michigan State are teams that are trying to fight to get into the tournament. But that Minnesota game should be a very winnable game at home, and then you've got the last game of the season on the road at Iowa. So I mean, if this team can win 3 games, or hell, if this team could win 4 games, that would make it very interesting. I mean, just say for a second they win out, they win these home games and upset Iowa. All of a sudden, you're 10-10 in the Big Ten. Like, maybe they'll be on the bubble at that point. I mean, that would be a pretty impressive, run of victories. I would say, 6 straight wins, and Nebraska's played one of the toughest schedules in the country. So I'm not saying they could play their way back into the bubble, but it would be interesting to see where they sat if they could win their next 4 games. I'll just say that.
You're looking for quality wins at this point when you're talking about, resumes for should they get into a tournament or not. And they've had a couple really solid ones. I mean, Wisconsin, Rutgers, Iowa. I'm trying to think who else. I was going to say Creighton, but they've kind of fallen off a little bit. But at the time, they were ranked 10th in the country. And I think this Nebraska team has shown that they can, play together. They play for each other. That was a big talking point on the telecast last time out, that they play for each other, and they fight and they play hard. And I'm excited not only to see how this season ends, but I have actual hope for next season. And so as long as Kesey keeps shooting the lights out of everything, then I think we'll be in good shape. And I'm happy to see some of the younger players really develop strongly.
Yeah, my biggest, they got to get Tominaga back, and whether it's they need to get him some type of NIL deal because he easily could go, I'm sure, to Japan or wherever and get a pretty solid contract, based off I think what he's shown so far. But hopefully, his goal is to get to the NBA, and I think Nebraska is still going to be the best place for him to try to do that. And look, I think the way he's played the last 10 games shows that that's not an unrealistic possibility for the kid. So that's going to be priority number one for Fred. You talk about re-recruiting your roster. You got to re-recruit that kid because, for one, the excitement level and just, the scoring ability, makes you wonder, like, why the hell was he only playing like 15 minutes a game? He should have been starting from game one.
Well, I think, there was this period of time where the coaching staff wanted to see if he could be that reliable scorer because last year at some points he didn't look good at all. And so, they were waiting to see if he could make that big leap, and he certainly has. I feel as though he's more polished in his game. He comes off of picks and screens better. He moves well without the basketball at a higher level than I think he did last season. And now it's just about continuing to play at that high level because, and I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say this, he's going to be a key piece of this basketball team next year if he stays. So
Mm-hmm.
um, he might honestly be that go-to scorer that Nebraska's been looking for next season. And sure, it's a little bit unorthodox that your three-point shooter is your go-to scorer. You usually think of like a point guard or somebody that drives to the rim, but yeah, I mean, he's earned that title, quite frankly.
Yeah, and he's been a really exciting player, and hopefully the Huskers can keep it going this weekend. It would be really exciting to see him knock off Maryland and get back to 500. So, we'll see where that goes. As far as some other Nebraska action, first pitch of the baseball season's coming up tonight. Will Bolt and the Huskers taking on the San Diego Toros Toreros, excuse me, made a Will Anchorman type mess up there, but. Just looking at this team, I've had to do a little more kind of checking into them, but really strong pitching staff. Emmett Olson, was all Big Ten preseason selection, and D1baseball.com basically has Olson and Jace Kaminska, another starting pitcher, probably mispronounced the name, but those guys are both rated as two of the top 15 prospects in the Big Ten Conference. Caleb Clark is a really exciting freshman that Nebraska has high hopes for. So we're going to see all three of those guys in the rotation. Tonight at 8:00 we'll see Olson, and it's going to be an interesting season for Nebraska. They're picked, I believe, 5th in the Big Ten right now. So it'd be nice to see this team, get back to Omaha at some point and play in the College World Series that they host. But just getting back to the NCAA tournament, I think would be a big step in the right direction for Nebraska next year.
Yeah, they have a lot of talent, but they're just young in some areas. I mean, you look at names like Garrett Angleem and then Max Anderson, and the way he's been able to you know kind of provide offensive pop for Nebraska over these last couple seasons, and then you have some local kids. Drew Christo was a name that I followed when Nebraska was really recruiting him, and he's got a great arm, good life on the fastball, and 6'4", 230. There could be some emerging stars on this pitching staff. I mean, I know the Will Bolt era has been up and down, but I feel optimistic about this team and the direction that Bolt is going to try to take them in.
So if you're interested in following along with the Huskers tonight, I'd say your best option is probably the Huskers Radio Network. It looks like the West Coast Conference Network will be covering those games, but I'm not even sure how you would access that as a Nebraska fan. So I would choose with the the old Huskers Radio Network tonight. It's a 4-game series to start out in San Diego, Friday through Monday. So we'll see how it is always a little bit tougher for the cold weather teams, when they play these teams from Florida and California and the South that have been able to, practice in normal baseball weather. I don't know if you saw what Matt Rule posted today, a picture, but it's a Lincoln Memorial Stadium just absolutely covered in snow, which gives you an idea of what, Will Bolt and the guys have been dealing with. So, I mean, but that's Big Ten baseball for you. That's just how it goes, and it'll be exciting to have another sport going for the Huskers that a lot of the Big Red faithful are really passionate about.
It's also very Big Ten like to have the game on a network that nobody can access or nobody can get or nobody can find. So, we're right on brand, even during baseball season. And yeah, I think this team can do, really good things. They are a little bit younger, but you know, I think they have a good base of, veterans, so to speak, and a good young core. So we'll see.
We will see. And I think we will wrap that up here. We'll start wrapping up our episode. We'll make sure to see you guys back on Monday. We'll wrap up, all the action from the weekend, all the recruiting information. We're going to put out, a mailbag on Twitter. So make sure, you kind of find us there and ask our questions. Even, answer, into the comment section here. Let us know what else you would like us to, kind of talk about moving forward. We're going to have some, positional breakdowns and things like that. But if there's anything else that you want to hear from or want to hear about, please let us know. Get into the comments section, hit like on that video, and make sure you hit that subscribe button. Subscribe to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel, and make sure you check out HuskerBigRed.com and give us a follow on Twitter for all of our great Nebraska content. So with that, thanks for joining us here again for another episode of the Husker Big Red podcast. Remember, you can find us on Apple and Spotify, and always hit subscribe on the YouTube there. And as always, folks, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.